I haven't made a League lore video in a long time. The reason I haven't done that is because last year, at the beginning of the year, they announced that they were going to unify the canons across Legends of Runeterra and Arcane and the regular League canon and all that stuff, bring it into one big canon. And I didn't want to make a bunch of videos like the 101 videos that would be outdated depending on what choices they made and when they made them. So I sat on my hands, and now I just haven't made a video in a really long time. But today, they have a new lore update. And I don't know what this is because I haven't watched it yet. So we're going to react to it and find out what's going on. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I don't care what you write. You can write papaya for all I care. Just leave something down there. It really helps the channel out a lot. Okay, let's watch and see if this is good news or weird news.
Hey folks, I'm Andre, also known as Meddler.
And I'm Jeremy, aka Riot Brightman. Today we'll be joined by two guests, Lexi, Riot Lexi.
These are such good formats for news too. It's been like a year of these.
Champions.
Not quite a year.
Laura
This year has been the year of these.
The head of IP strategy, who's going to talk a bit about our approach to the lore
The head
as a whole.
of
Then
IP
we'll
strategy.
Be back to talk about language.
Okay, so this is definitely about the canon unification.
Select, quick play,
That
and
is
a
a
few other things.
huge IP
All right,
strategy.
Let's hand things over to Riot Lexical for an update on champions.
Hi everyone, I'm Lexi, Riot Lexical Gal, the Champions team lead. Since we last talked,
I guess.
both Nefiri and Briar have joined the Rift with vicious bites and a hangry attitude. Next up, we'll
Subtitles
be
are
releasing
bothering
a
me,
new artistic
'cause they're behind.
midlaner, Hui. Hui's mastery of his craft gives him the tools needed to bring his artistic visions to life.
This is the Ionian
He owes
artist.
much of his skills to his previous masters, but after time and exploration, he has transcended their skill and created his own unique style. While Hui comes prepared with what he wants to paint, his extensive palette of possibilities leaves room to learn, experiment, and master. After Hui paints a masterpiece on the Rift, we'll be turning to a new creature champion. Though this one's a bit cuter than Nefiri. Our new creature, though cute and small, is smoldering with power, and he'll be sauntering onto the Rift with all the pomp and circumstance that befit a royal of his status. Further out, we have a Vestayan solo laner from a forest village.
I
with the
changed my mind
ability to
about
see
reacting.
what
I'll
others easily overlook.
do it after this.
Okay, that's it for new champions. Now
Okay.
on to
We'll look at the other stuff in a second. Okay, so new small creature champion. Do they? I don't think they would call a Yordle a creature champion, right? That would be weird.
Rift with all the pomp and circumstance that befit a royal of his status.
That's gotta be. What if it's King Poro? What if it's the King Poro? That's gotta be the King Poro, right? He's a royal creature champion that's soft and cuddly. So we got Ionian artist, which is cool because we'll get a bunch of like Placidium lore probably out of that. That would be my gut shot. And then this has got to be King Poro.
Further
Called
out,
shot.
we have a Vestayan solo laner from a forest village with the ability to see what others easily overlook.
Cool.
Okay, that's it for
Probably I guess, you know, Vestayan Forest Village could be Ionia or could be Ionia or could be Ishtal.
new champions.
Could be anywhere else
Now
too.
on
There's
to everyone's
forests
favorite
everywhere, but
Scorpion.
like
The Skarner team has been hard at work on the Ishtali display.
this looks cool.
They've been thinking
I like how he
about
looks.
everything from how many legs Skarner should have, the answer is 6, to how he would look scuttling around a wall,
Very
and
cool.
even how his tail can pick up and throw a massive boulder. You know, the usual stuff. The team wrote a lot in today's Champions roadmap that cover his new gameplay and how it has impacted other areas
Okay,
of the
I'll have to go
design.
look at the roadmap
That's
after
it from
too.
the Champions team for now. We'll be back in January with more to share about 2024.
Okay, it's been a little while since we spoke about League's lore. For a long time, League and associated experiences like short stories were our only way to tell stories in Runeterra. Nowadays though, that's no longer the case. So we want to talk a bit about how we're updating our approach to the lore, and then talk through some upcoming examples of how that will be reflected in League and in other places. To start with, we're going to pass things over to Laura DeYoung.
Hi all, it's been a while. For some background, I'm Laura, a former art director on League, and nowadays I'm working as the head of IP Creative, which is a group planning how we
Pause this. It's weird. I wonder if we're not getting any more short stories anymore,
All the League universes across all of our experiences.
or we're like way less of them. Probably they probably wouldn't do no more. They'd probably do less of them.
We've introduced
We've already seen that, right?
that have woven their way
Sorry,
into the
I'm talking over her.
Over the
I'm gonna
years, Andre
rewind
across
here.
all of our experiences. As Andre talked about earlier this year, over the years we've introduced inconsistencies that have woven their way into the storytelling and the world building of Runeterra. Some good examples are how hextech was invented, and Yorick feeling just MIA during the Sentinels of Light event.
Nice of them to mention Yorick, but this is how they're gonna announce that the hextech origin is like officially becoming. I mean, we already knew the hextech one was gonna get retconned, right? Because as soon as they changed Skarner's lore, it was like, okay, the crystal thing is probably not sticking around. It wasn't confirmed, but it was a strong indicator that that was the case. Calling it out specifically here, they're probably just going to go with whatever Arcane does for the continued origins, right?
Going forward, we don't believe that's the right approach, because that kind of fragmentation makes the world feel less believable, and it just undercuts meaningful character development. And frankly, it makes it hard for all of you to feel like you can really invest deeply in a story, knowing it might not be honored in future storytelling. So going forward, from today, all new storytelling is going to be part of one shared canon, rather than a jumble of different experiences that are similar but inconsistent. And our goal is to ensure that major events in our stories, as well as the essence of what makes a champion who they are, will be reflected across everything that Riot makes. Getting to that consistent state is not going to be a sudden flip of the switch, but a gradual process. This doesn't mean we're going to go back to retcon every champion or story we've told, but every time we touch a part of the League universe, we're going to take a beat to ask ourselves where the inconsistent threads are and work towards weaving them together so the world makes sense. This is going to take time, and we believe the payoff for getting this right will be absolutely worth it. Okay, I'm going to hand things back to Andre and Jeremy so they can talk about what this specifically means for League.
Okay. Pause game. So that means they're not gonna go do. They're only gonna go do the retcon work as it comes up and as it's necessary, as they tell future stories, which makes sense because they just like from a resourcing perspective, it's probably just easier than trying to like task a bunch of resources to go back and edit through every story all at once. You just kind of hit them as you go, as new stuff comes up. I paused it because I don't know if there's going to be more lore here or if they're just going to go into gameplay stuff now. This is going to tick a lot of people off in the lore community, I think. I'm going to hit play. Let's just see if there's more lore first, I guess.
We're really excited to pull all the different threads of storytelling across Runeterra together over time, so that we've got one shared, consistent canon. So let's talk about some examples of that. The moments shown in past season start cinematics, like Awaken, for example, those have often felt like they should be canon, and some of them are fully consistent with the wider world, but some of them aren't. Going forwards,
that's cool concept art for Aatrox.
Including the upcoming cinematic in just a few months, we're going to be making sure that they're an integrated part.
Okay, so that was for sure Aatrox art for the new cinematic then. He looks cool. I mean, Aatrox kind of always looks cool, but this is like a particularly a cool. This is a raid boss world threat art look for the artwork.
Including the upcoming cinematic in just a few months, we're going to be making sure that they're an integrated part of our world and storytelling.
Skarner's update early next year is another good example. Skarner's old lore, and that of a few other associated champions, doesn't match that of a few other. Skarner's old lore next year is another good example.
I was trying to figure out if there was something going on with the Yumi in the background, but I don't think there is.
Skarner's old lore, and that of a few other associated champions, doesn't mesh with the creation of hextech revealed in Arcane, which is the origin for hextech and the unified canon going forwards. So we're going to be making updates over time as a result to make sure that champions like Skarner, Seraphine, and Camille are well integrated and well connected to the rest of Runeterra, so they can be part of that larger, wider shared storytelling.
Riot, if you need ideas on how to do that, I know somebody that's made a great video. They made a great video, checks notes, 8 months ago on how you might be able to do that. Maybe worth a look. I probably made it link to that video up there in the corner. I'll also put it in the description. You can go watch it. It's about how you could meld Arcane and the current canon into one coherent sort of story with as few retcons as possible, but there will still be retcons.
The upcoming Forge game, Song of Nunu, is worth highlighting as well. It's canon, offering some insight into part of the Freljord, particularly Nunu, Willump, and Braum.
Now, some of you might also be wondering about some of the ways we used to tell stories previously. Short stories in particular are something we've deliberately moved away from. Short stories were an effective way to dig into character backgrounds more deeply when we didn't have other ways of doing so. But
Feeling good about that call.
they've also always been a very niche experience that most players just never engaged with.
True.
We're focusing instead on storytelling through other mediums, ones that also let us flesh out characters and the world, but do so while resonating with more of the wider player base.
Switching gears a bit, earlier this year we announced we'd be adding an option to choose the language you play League in. It's taken us a little bit longer than we
there are
initially
literally-
estimated, but I'm happy to share that the current plan is
Okay,
for the
these
feature
are
to go
all-
live in November.
The rest of this is about gameplay, which is not relevant for the context of me reacting to this video, so I'm not going to watch it anymore. Well, that's a lie. I will watch it after I finish talking about this, and if there's something there, then I'll put it in, but we're going to just like skip to talking about the lore implications. All this did is say, yes, we are going to retcon a bunch of stuff to make these cohesive. I know there's a lot of people in the lore community that are not super pumped about that idea, and I totally get why. I alluded to this when I made the Arcane canonification video like earlier in the year, and I think it's like a super reasonable stance to be a little upset that stuff that you like is probably going to get retconned and all this. But from like a business strategy perspective, it was never going to work for them to have the hit TV series that was Arcane not have a story that also worked with the game, specifically the MMO, right? So if you're looking at this going forward and you're saying, okay, Riot, we're trying to sell more of these games, we're trying to sell people into this universe, the widest appeal entry point can't not work with the rest of it. I know people want to say, well, like, yes, it can just be a different multiverse, it'll all work, they can be just different, separate, but kind of the same. It's just like, it's not gonna work. So they had to merge them. Some stuff's gonna get lost in the crossfire. The hextech one is a big example. The hextech one is gonna hurt a lot, and is probably really tough for them too, right? Because they alluded to this in the video, but it touches a lot of champions that aren't just Skarner. If the hextech crystals aren't the living souls of the Brackern, then Seraphine probably isn't hearing voices coming out of the hextech crystals anymore. It changes a lot of stuff about Camille, right? It changes like, where did her hextech come from? How long has she had it? All that stuff if it was invented with Jace. It also means the timeline's going to get... Honestly, the react to this is you should go watch the Arcane video that I made. I know I already said that twice. I'm probably going to say it more before this video ends. Because in that video, I talk about all the inconsistencies that they basically have to hit for Arcane. And as much as like long-time fans of the lore probably don't want to hear it, at least from like a hextech and piltover and zaun perspective, Arcane is going to be the like thing that they centerpiece and focus around. It has to be. The TV show was too successful for it not to be. There's also like really nitpicky stuff about Arcane that's different that people point to and say like, this is why this could never work. And to be honest, a lot of it is fluff. It absolutely could work in both cases. So I wouldn't be too fussed about stuff like that. But the big pieces, right? Like one of the big ones is Heimerdinger really obviously refers to the Rune Wars in Arcane. But the timeline, it gets extremely weird with Heimerdinger if you like do the age calculation and try and place where Arcane is happening relative to where the Rune Wars happened relative to Heimerdinger's age. Like it doesn't quite work. I think this also I'm trying to think. We got to look at the book. You can't see it, but we're flipping. Okay, so the thing about Arcane being the centerpiece is that the printed book will no longer be canon for a bunch of stuff. Unless they do a lot of massaging the way that I talk about in that Arcane video. Because it's stuff like the Sun Gates, as an example, that are like very explicitly called out in that book. We don't see them in Arcane. They could still exist. but we don't see them. They're sort of replaced with the hex gates. So there's a lot of history stuff about piltover and zaun that's going to have to change. And so from an actual implementation perspective, what this means then is that all of the inconsistencies, if they're getting addressed as they come up, means we can actually sort of probably plot out what is going to get addressed when. That's a cool video. Maybe I'll make that. Because what's going to happen is, for example, like Son of Nunu is going to come out with the Freljord. If there's any inconsistencies in the Freljord stuff, it's going to get talked about in Son of Nunu at that point, as long as Son of Nunu relatively touches it. So stuff about like how the Freljord was formed and the place of the spirit gods and things like that, that's probably addressed in Son of Nunu, and we can take that forward as whatever the canon probably actually is. Freljord's a little weird, right? Because a lot of it is like spoken word story because of the culture that happens in the Freljord, so it could still be kind of massaged and tweaked, but that's good because there are small inconsistencies with like how the Freljord was supposed to have been formed. And then when we look out further, we probably like won't get any of the Arcane, hextech, because none of the stuff on the roadmap that they just talked about from a champion perspective is really related to piltover and zaun, right? So probably none of that is getting touched until Arcane Season 2, at which point a bunch of stuff they'll have to go in and tweak and things like that. So around the time of Arcane Season 2 is probably when we hear about what's going on with Camille and Seraphine and Victor and every champion that has to be associated with hextech. But overall, that's exciting news. So really like the big news pieces out of this, right, are Brackern hextech for sure gone. Now Arcane hextech is my new best friend. And now also being able to map out like the order that changes are going to start to happen as they massage them. I guess the other thing here is them saying that they're like not going to tell stories through short stories anymore. Not that Riot watches my videos. I know they don't. But if by some chance one person at Riot comes across this video, I think like short stories are still cool. Like they are still fun. I'm sure we'll still get them probably with champion bios at least. Like we're gonna get bios to some extent, right? But like I would say just don't entirely give up on that format. The fact that the player base doesn't currently interact with it speaks more to the player base of League than it does to potential fans of your IP. And I agree with you that like the other stuff is a way better way to tell stories in general, right? The Ruination novel, banger. Slapper of a novel, great book, great way to tell stories. All the Riot Forge projects, the comics that got put out, like the Katarina comic, Arcane, obviously. All that stuff, better way to tell a story, very exciting way to tell stories for Runeterra. But like don't sell the short stories short. The lore website that you sort of have running right now could still be a really good resource. All those stories are still cool. They're all still good to read. Having access to the map is good, even if it hasn't been updated in a millennium. We have confirmation that the universe website is sort of like a, it's a side thing. It's not really focused on a ton. It might be worth thinking about that strategy as you hone in on unifying the canon on like what universe could actually be, because it could still be a really good resource. And like I said, a lot of the stories are still cool. There's stories in there that are great bits of writing. Just don't give up on it, don't give up on that format, even though you have so many other good ways to tell stories now. That's all I'm saying. Is there anything else that I really like want to talk about specifically? I don't think so. The Aatrox cinematic concept art is really cool. I think it's good to have confirmation that all of these cinematics going forward are going to be canon. The cinematics are very cool, and it's cool to be able to point people at them. They only talk about League of Legends here because this is a League of Legends dev update, but I assume this will remain true for Legends of Runeterra as well. Something that's not talked about here, even though this is a weird video, right? Because it's about League of Legends, the video game League of Legends, but so much of this video in particular is actually about the entire Runeterra IP. Legends of Runeterra has always been sort of like tertiary content, and it's been really good for building up details in the world because they can address these details in such like a pinpoint manner. It's like what are certain aspects of Demacian culture, like that kind of thing. It makes it able to like, we can create some stuff that you can consider it canon because it probably doesn't affect anything else, but we could reserve the right to change it at any time. That strategy is probably different now, knowing that going forward, all of this stuff is going to be congruous with one another. So that means that the elephant in the room for Legends of Runeterra is probably Cythria, right? That is the biggest one for lore, lore. But there's other small ones too. Like I guess it's hard to say, but I would assume at this point we can probably take all the Darken that they added as canon. Until somebody says otherwise. Okay, cool. That's all I'm going to do in this video because it's a react video and I'm going to have to cut it down already based on the 29 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm thinking that this might actually be worthy of a more formatted and adjusted breakdown, but I wanted to react to it fast because I'm super excited and this makes me super excited. What a time to be alive. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.